This video is brought to you by Sporlan, quality, integrity, and tradition. Alright, so today we have a call on a bar reach and that's not working. Alright, that's a little odd that it says 5 degrees in LA. That's some sort of an alarm, I'm sure. But we open it up. This is where they keep their kegs. And I don't know if you guys can see back there, but it is totally iced up. The whole coil is solid ice. So we need to get this taken apart and figure out how to defrost it. The first step though is finding where the power source is. We can hit this button. What the heck? I bet you we have a bad controller. When I hit the defrost button, it says RS, whatever that means. There we go, defrost now. So now I defrosted it, but the condensing unit's not turning off. Yeah, I bet you this thing has water damage. Let's open it up. Take the cover off and I can clearly, this is calcium. This is all calcium right here. So we're gonna pull the cover off. Now these guys are kind of tricky because typically just this particular restaurant, the plugs are hidden behind the box and it's really hard to unplug them. Luckily on the glass tenders, they do a good job of making it's a plug right there and that disconnects the display. Now we still have power to the unit, and the cool thing is now it's just using air across the fans running. So we still got to figure out how to turn off power to the whole unit, but at least now we can pull this cover off. So the control, I pulled the cover off. I didn't break anything, but it's all covered in grease. But when we get down into this control, and you look right down in here, it's all full of like grease and calcium from water damage on the circuit board. So definitely have a bad control, but we need to get it defrosted. I got the fan guard off. There's still a little bit of ice on it. It's gonna be a miracle if nothing's damaged because of how wet I had to get it. This thing was a giant mess and there was no way to defrost it without just going to town. So kind of making a mess. We got a transformer over there. We got a lot of stuff, but yeah, sometimes this is how it gets, you know? All right, I got it all wired back up and turned on. Nothing blew up. It's running. I ran a new sensor while I had the coil apart. I've got a universal Dixel controller here, XR60. This will work just fine, 115 volts, so we're gonna get started on wiring this guy in. Paying attention to how I took it apart, the old controller jumps the orange and the blue together right there, so we're actually just gonna use these 4 wires. We'll cut them, we'll strip them, and then put them in on the back of that control in the corresponding places that they need to go. All right, it's on and running. Evaporator fan motors are running. It's set for 36 with a 4. So everything's cool there. And I set it up for 6 defrosts a day at 15 minutes each. So that should be sufficient. So we just need to wait for it to come down to temp. And we might not be able to see it come down to temp because if this thing's at 60 degrees and they have kegs all the way down, it's gonna take forever to get those kegs down to temp. All right, and we just satisfied, so good to go on this guy. Nice and good. Compressor shut off. Yep. And unit's cooling. They need to clean it a bit, but we'll give them the keys and tell them to keep an eye on it. These calls are not always crazy overcomplicated, but it's so important to remember the basics, right? You know, understanding the sequence of operation. That helped me to know how to diagnose this guy. And also being familiar with the equipment. Now, of course, when you walk up to something you've never worked on before, you're not going to be as familiar as I am with a glass tender keg cooler, okay? But they're super easy, and once you figure out the little tips and tricks, you know, to work your way through things, they become pretty easy to work on. So this one, you know, the design of the evaporator coil is kind of silly in that when it does freeze up, it completely encapsulates the fan motors and fan blades. And unfortunately, you just got to turn off power and just blast everything with a water hose. You got to get the evaporator fan motors wet and everything. That's just how it works. It's a bummer, but it is what it is. I mean, I guess that maybe if the customer was willing to unplug the box and leave it unplugged for a day, maybe, and then you come back, you know, a day later, maybe that would reduce some of the moisture that could potentially get into the motors. But they need their keg coolers going. The beer sales in these places are where they make their money. So, you know, if they had to replace a fan motor because it got wet because you were trying to defrost it, so be it. They really don't care about that stuff. They just need their beer back, you know. They need to be able to sell it. Keeping truck stock is really important. So Typically, I keep those Dixel controllers in my truck, okay? But we do go through them quite often. So there is times that I'm caught without one, but we try. Now, I don't keep two because I don't sell that many. So I usually only need to keep one, but literally I just had a technician working on a Perlick unit that had an OEM Dixel controller. Now, I'm a big fan of using OEM parts because you don't have to really think too hard to install them. But in this situation, they needed their keg cooler running, and I was able to use a Dixel controller, which is the same brand, but the one that was in there was an OEM one specifically made for glass tender, and it has the little plugs on it, and it's just, you know, the universal controller, you have some more functionality to it. So you do have to program the universal controller. You don't slip the wires on the little connectors. You actually push them into a little terminal and tighten a screw down. So there is a little more thought process that goes into it. But in certain situations, I personally am okay with not using an OEM controller, like this situation. The Dixel, the aftermarket universal, it's a XR60 Dixel controller. That's the 120 volt one. It's very versatile. And in fact, you know, you keep them in your truck, and whenever you run across a Dixel controller that was OEM, just slap in an XR60 for the most part. I mean, there's some situations where I might order the OEM one, but this is super easy, and you're able to get the customer operational, right? Obviously, I'm keeping the customer in the loop, walking them through everything, letting them know I'm going to have to defrost it. I'm going to use a water hose. It's going to make a mess, la-da-da. You know, are you okay with that? And, you know, they agree. They just want their box working. I was very surprised that I was able to see this box come down to temp, even though you saw the clip where I said, I don't know if we're going to see it come down to temp, and then boom, next thing you know, it's 35 degrees. Surprisingly, it came down pretty quick. I did take a lunch while that was happening and just, you know, came back and it was good to go. This call, actually, this was like from a year ago. This video has just been sitting in my archive footage. And I have a bunch of these things where, you know, I have some other videos that I could make, some longer ones, some walk-in cooler ones, some air conditioner ones, but I need them for certain projects that I'm working on and stuff. So, you know, hey, you get one of these. So it's a short and sweet one. I really appreciate you making it to the end of the video. Thank you so very much for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Check out my website, hvacrvideos.com. We have merchandise available. You guys have been killing it on these hats. Thank you so very much. I just got a restock in, and you guys are already ordering a bunch, and I'm going to probably have to order more. So thank you. That is awesome. Keep in mind, as the fall weather is coming, we do have beanies. We also have zip-up hoodies, and then we have the normal t-shirts and the flag shirt and all that good stuff. So check out the website. There's a couple other ways you can support the channel if you're interested in doing so. Just look in the show notes of the video. All kinds of information. TrueTechTools.com. Have an offer code Big Picture. There's information in the show notes too. So, hey, I really appreciate you, and we will catch you on the next one.